Hello, everyone. Thank you. My name is Tasfalam, and sorry for the slight delay today. We had some technical issues. We finally have resolved it. So again, I would like to say thank you and welcome to our previous seminar of the Decolonizing Forced Migration seminars today. Today we are very, very excited indeed to welcome Dr. Dallaire to give a presentation on a Freirian view of online education. My colleague Saad will talk more about her and her work. So as usual, we will have 30 to 40 minutes presentation, and we will open the floor for questions and comments. If you have any questions, comments, reflections on Dr. Dallaire's presentation, please do use the chat function or raise your hands, and you can come on the floor and ask. I would also like to mention that the presentation will be recorded, and if anyone does not want to be recorded, please turn off your cameras. You can also rename yourselves on the Zoom. So without further ado, I would like to invite my colleague Saad to introduce Dr. Dallaire. Saad.
Thank you, Tasfalam. Thank you again, Dr. Dallaire Sano, for being with us today. Dr. Sano Dallaire is an associate professor at the Department of English Abdel Hamid Ibn Badis University in Algeria. And she's also a poetess. She's involved in many areas, including Arab women writings, world literatures, and online learning. Dr. Dallaire has published a number of academic papers. Her recent one is investigating the EFL courses shift into Moodle during the pandemic COVID-19. And she has a series of poems and 2 monographs with Lambert Publishing. She is currently involved in newly explored areas like post-humanism, electronic discourse, digital humanities, and educational technology. As Dr. Dallaire's expertise is relevant to one of our key themes in this seminar, decolonizing education, indigenous methodologies and epistemologies. She will be talking today about her reflections on Freire's theory and Freirian view of online education. And Dr. Dallaire Sano, the virtual floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, my dear Saad. I'm so glad to join you today, guys. The first word I have to address to Saad, because she was the one who has offered me this opportunity to be with you today and to share with you a number of important ideas and reflections, particularly that we are living probably the same conditions in the circus of education and higher education in particular, that is due to the pandemic of the COVID-19. Also, I have to congratulate you, the group of young researchers at both universities, for organizing this series of interesting seminars, because I had the chance to watch your videos on YouTube, as Saad has recommended for me to do. And I loved all the reflections and discussions that you had with different scholars so far. So today I wanted to join you so as to exteriorize so many agonies, so many ideas and reflections about online education, about education in general, about us as coming from North African area, as Arabs, as Muslims, as African individuals, as the subaltern. So it's going to be hopefully a rich discussion. So the day that Saad has presented the whole thing to me, the idea of decolonization is one of the most appealing areas of research for me, at least because I come from the academic circles of post-colonial studies originally. Now I just transformed into another different scholar, interested particularly in new technologies integrating into education. So I had to think, at the same time I was reading extensively for Freire, Paulo Freire, and I wanted to find out convergences between online education and the amount of opportunities we could have had as teachers and students during the corona pandemic period that's still going on. And at the same time, still the Paulo Freire's soul, spirit was behind me. I don't know why. It's just like a monster that has obsessed me. I mean, because of the importance and the significance and the weight of his thoughts. So to introduce Paulo Freire, for those who don't know the scholar, he's a Brazilian scholar of the 20th century, particularly of the 70s and 80s. His seminal work that was like an explosive bomb in academia and educational studies with the title of Pedagogy of the Oppressed, that was published in Brazilian language 1970, and then later on was translated into English I think in 1996 or earlier. But then let's talk about the book itself and the theory of critical pedagogy, at the same time talking about the oppressed individual learner and the pedagogy of oppressed, so that we move to another different type of pedagogy that is current, modern, technology-based, technology-enhanced, that now is called as pedagogy of abundance. Do we have some convergences, some divergences? Something has changed in that? Let's see together. So to introduce you to this idea of oppressed, or the pedagogy of the oppressed, initially is an idea that Freire has come up with, or came out with, while he was teaching in the poorest regions in Sao Paulo and the capital of Brazil, Brasilia, etc. So as a Marxist, you know, as an activist, as a social and political activist, he was revolutionizing against all the conditions that poor learners in Brazil were suffering from, like the education that was offered to the rich people in Brazil was completely different from the quality of education offered to the poor learners in Brazil. Also, the thing that captured my attention is that Paulo Freire describes the teacher as the oppressor. Can you imagine that? That me as a teacher, I am an oppressor. Yes, I am. According to Freire, when I impose my program, when I impose my knowledge, when I impose my methodology and my approach and my teaching techniques, I am an oppressor. The idea of the banking model of education, there is a model of banking knowledge into the head, into the brain of the learner, that does prevent the learner from thinking critically. Isn't it this what we are doing in our classrooms? No matter what modern classrooms are ours, no matter what and how learner-centered our classrooms are, indeed, yes, we are still within this pedagogy of the oppressed. The work has inspired me as an Algerian scholar, particularly during the Hirak period, the popular movement or the movement of the people last year and the year before, and we're still living that and witnessing that, particularly among students. When students come to our classes, no room for liberty, no room for freedom of ideas is allowed. So at that time, I am an oppressor and my learners are the oppressed. The other thing that has captured my attention after the Hirak and next to the Hirak or besides the Hirak is the thing of online education during the pandemic. Up to now, we are asked to upload lectures on the Moodle, and that's it. And the learner goes there, logs in, and download the lectures. All right, so where is this room of dialogue? Because according to Freire, teaching and learning is dialogical, is a process of creating dialogue. At this very moment, The teacher is no more the holder of knowledge. The teacher is part of the process, is again, not the teacher per se. He is a teacher learner. And the learner is not only a learner, but he is or she is a learner teacher. This is why, according to Freire, learning should be critical. And afterwards, he came up with an interesting idea, that is pedagogy of hopefulness. I mean, this is really thought-provoking to speak about learning, to refer to learning and to describe it as pedagogy of hopefulness. Where is this hopefulness? Hopefulness is in the bringing up and trying to transform in a whole generation of learners from like machines standing up there in your classroom, sitting like chairs and tables in your classroom, into active agents who would then afterwards come out to the society and join the society to create change, to bring about change, radical change. And this is what is really missing in our educational system. And I speak about Algerian educational system, particularly at the level of higher education. I mean, we are not allowed to, let's say, tackle political issues in classes of, let's say, the English department. I'm not allowed to, or I'm warned to speak about politics in my classroom. So where is the freedom of thought? Where is the freedom of expression here as an intellectual, as someone who represents the elite, the intellectual elite, and my learners are future agents of change and future changers of the whole political system. This is why you can understand, obviously, why Freire's work are not taught. Just go and look on and Google it, whether you find any faculty in Algeria or North African countries, and I know what I'm saying, whether they teach the works of Freire, works of another scholar, if you allow me to mention his name, Mohamed Arkoun. He's an Algerian scholar based in Paris. Another scholar like Malik Ben Nabi. These people are completely excluded from the programs, and we don't have programs for critical theory. Imagine that, like, critical theory itself is completely dismissed in our programs. You can find areas like literature, British literature, American literature, etc., but we don't have modules or units or areas of research where postgraduate students or even doctoral students would tackle, let's say, work on projects in critical theory. I was really angry. Let's say I was astonished, and then afterwards I was angry, knowing that my students, my doctoral students, don't know the Frankfurt School. This is terrible. Well, coming back to online education, well, I want to say that critical pedagogy does converge somewhere with online education. But online education is obviously free, is open, is for everyone, everywhere, anytime. All right. MOOCs are the tendency and the fashion in educational circles. They are good, and they saved the programs, and they saved faculties and departments all over the world. But again, I have a question. Is this pedagogy of abundance, the abundance of information, the abundance of courses you can find on MOOCs and any type of online education and courses, is it good for a learner? And is it global? I mean, do you suggest and do you really believe in that online education on MOOCs is global in its essence and its an opportunity, or the biggest opportunity for all learners from all over the world, from the ones coming from Algeria, from ones coming from Indonesia, from Mali, you see, from Palestine, from any place in the world, from United States. Does it offer an equitable chance for all learners of the world? No, it isn't. I don't think so, or it may not be the case, because we still have hindrances and obstacles when it comes to the tools that we have, the technical tools that we have in countries that are developing countries, that are poor countries, that are countries, they are left behind. And this is what we call digital divide. The digital divide is one of the biggest issues that prevent online education from becoming a typical model of critical pedagogy. All right, I tried it myself with my students. I tried to work with them via Google Meet. I tried to work with them via Google Classroom. I tried to work with them via different platforms, Edmodo, etc. But I was all the time handcuffed, straitjacketed by the conditions that many of my students are still suffering from, are still, let's say, found as obstacles and hindrances. And at the end of the day, they are left behind, because only students who are financially at ease, who have Androids, who have connection, access to internet, etc., are those who are given the opportunity to join me on these platforms. So it isn't another type of pedagogy of the oppressed. I think, yes, it is in a way, in one way or another, it is one type of pedagogy of the oppressed, since I am oppressing those and I am excluding those who haven't the opportunity to have access to internet and other things like getting a mobile phone, a brand new computer with all the full option, etc. So I think we need to be careful vis-a-vis the openness, vis-a-vis the education for all that MOOCs do provide us with. I have many ideas. I think via your questions that these ideas would pop up and would come again to my mind, because I'm really so tired. I'm out of my breath, and maybe so I knows why. I think I have come to the end of the first part of my discussion. Mm-hmm. We should answer.
Thank you. I will leave you to take some breath. I know like you've had a really long day, but thank you. Despite of all of the challenging circumstances, you managed to join us today. And thank you for there was so many ideas to kind of try to grapple with. Thank you for this reflective talk. And what I liked most about it is that you were sharing your experiences of applying the spheres of pedagogy of the oppressed. I think one of the things that I really liked what you were saying is that pedagogy of the oppressed is about the critical humanistic view that Freire is trying to kind of convey through his work. And I have some questions maybe for you. You were also saying that there was some sort of pressure from maybe the ministry, maybe from the educational institution to just keep pouring informations on the learners, whether like in classes and face-to-face teaching, and later when we moved online. And you mentioned a very important thing where you were saying some of the majority of the learners who are from rural areas don't have the means to join online. They don't have the access to internet. They don't have the smartphones and so on. So how did you deal with such pressures from your experiences, and how you try to kind of manage to bring that dialogic aspect that Freire was talking?
I always remember that I am an intellectual person who represents the elite. I'm not afraid of any pressure coming from those at the top of the hierarchy, the political hierarchy. I'm not speaking politics here, definitely not, but I always try to speak up my mind to my students and let them see whether thoughts brought by me or thoughts that I'm saying in classroom do relate to what they are thinking about Hirak. Why not speaking about Hirak in classes of literature? Why not speaking about works of, let's say, authors like Ahmed Dawood? We never speak about these authors. They are so controversial that we keep an eye blind on their works. Let's speak about the works. Let's have a discussion, a very rich and critical discussion with our particularly postgraduate students. I mean, it's so unfortunate to find this group of students so limited, carré, like a squared in their thoughts. And I always tell them, please read critical theory, and you have a number of key figures. Read for Foucault, for Derrida, for these people, Malik Nabi. We have Muhammad Arkoun in Algeria. We have Ben Jelloul in Morocco. All these people would create a storm in their mind, so that they think about their situation, what they are going to be in the future, like a sheep following, like a cattle following the shepherd, or becoming agents of change. They have to decide. I hate being on the margin as an intellectual. I hate at the same time being the subaltern vis-à-vis the Occident. I had a round table with some colleagues from United States, from Brazil, from Philippines. We were talking about that dialogue between the northern part of the world and the south, north and south. And I mentioned transmodernism, Dussel, transmodernism. Let's move away from Eurocentric theory, philosophies. It's our turn to bring about and to invent and to create, let's say, spaces for our thoughts. All right, everything that comes from the Occident is debatable. I have, for instance, I give the example of the Frankfurt School and religion. One example. Okay, I have to read about that, but I have to contextualize the whole thing, the whole approach and theory. So, and when it comes to, and you asked me, Suad, about how do I handle a situation when students do not have the opportunity to join me due to lack of conditions and of tools and materials. So it's always finding out one day, like Friday, to ask them to go to Cyber Cafe or find someone to give them their Android 1 hour. So I always reduce the time so that they can join me only for half an hour or 1 hour. And I always ask them to choose one day per week. 1 day a week, it's the minimum. So they always try to do it, and it was successful, 90% successful.
Oh, thank you for that. I mean, like, when you mentioned the curriculum and how it's kind of excluding some things and focusing only on Eurocentric or only on Anglophonic, like especially the content for teaching, and you're teaching English, which is in a way it's an imperial language. And when you see the materials that have been given to the learners, you notice that it's kind of exclusive. So nowadays, like, English is supposed to be the lingua franca, the international language. So why are we still like shifting our view only on the native speakers materials? Why don't we like open the doors for others from the outer circle, from the developing circle as well? So that's the question that it's always asked itself.
Yeah, why not having other literatures to teach to our students? For instance, you are an ex-student of our department at Abdelhamid bin Bamdis, and everywhere in Algeria, in all departments of English all over the country, you have two literatures, and a third one Sometimes it's there, sometimes not. So British literature, American literature, and sometimes you find African English literature. What about Indian literature? What about post-colonial literature? What about Arab English literature? So I try to introduce some texts for students back in the days, I mean, like 6 years ago or so. And it was a good experience to change British literature into Arab English literature. Why not? Or Canadian literature. Why not? Australian. Why not? Having different types of literature.
Did it work? Like, did they like it, the students being able to kind of see different materials?
They did like works by Ahdaf Suwaid, by Fadia Faqir, by Leila Abu Laila. You have married writers, women writers, male writers, Anglophone writers. So it is an opportunity for us, for students, to read our thoughts via the works of these authors of Arab origins. So it does culturally relate to our context somehow.
Yeah. Maybe Tesfalem, you want to raise some comments?
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Dalal. I don't have my background is not in education and the pedagogy, but two reflections just here in your presentation. You talk about one. You mentioned the fact that you try to encourage your students to read and know about the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory, and you know the school has been criticized by scholars and intellectuals from the global south, especially, for example, Edward Said for its silence in colonization and imperial history, for example. I wonder how you reflect that when you encourage your students to read and know more about the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory in that respect. But my second question is, you talked about technology, online education as maybe a potential part of maybe a revision to Freirian mode of education, especially the banking approach to education. One of the important aspects, correct me if I'm wrong, of Freirian model of teaching was also the experiential model of teaching, where we have this human-to-human relationality and sociality. How do you think then the conversations and ideas of incorporating or re-embedding online learning will affect our human-to-human relationality? I'm from Eritrea, and now, social environments, the circles are a very, very important part of our learning process. It's not the classrooms, the blackboards, the chalks, it's also the environment. How do you think, do you think this is going to be a threat to our relationality, sociality? Do you think it's going to enhance our relationality and sociality? How? If you could reflect on both.
Both. Excellent questions and reflections. Thank you so much for that. Well, starting from the first point that you raised vis-à-vis Edward Said, Francis Fanon or Spivak, each time, well, I used to teach these people in my classes of literature for postgraduate students. Fatma Marnissi as well from Morocco when it comes to feminism, because I used to teach as well women writings and feminist studies, etc. Once I voice the subaltern within my learners, they enjoyed the lectures. They understand that Edward Said and scholars coming from the global south were trying to voice them, to exteriorize their subalternity. This is one. The second, Ahdaf Suwaid, I have read something, I said Ahdaf Suwaid, the Egyptian writer and political activist. So for the second question, and thank you for that, because I was about to say it in my discussion when I was speaking about MOOCs and the chances and opportunities that these online courses for free sometimes, often, do provide for learners from all over the world. So already MOOCs are typically of a neoliberal idea or origins. You think of them, some of the MOOCs, You have to pay to get a certificate. So still it is making business, making money, or it is business for making money. This is on the one hand. On the second hand, when you go online and you enroll in any of the MOOCs, you are in front of your mobile phone or PC or computer, not in front of teacher. So it is a human machine. It's as if we are becoming cyborgs, machines in front of us. Never replace that relationship between teachers and students in the classroom, because according to Freire, that dialogue, that humanistic part of the learning process and the teaching process is core, pivotal in the whole process of educational process. So I don't think that online education would be beneficial for teachers and learners to enhance that part, the humanistic part, when it comes to teacher-learner relationship. Well, it's as if we are, let's say, transhumanizing that relationship. We are trying to, okay, it's another level of relationship, but it never replaces a human-to-human relationship, if you understand what I mean. I tried it myself. To tell you that, I tried it myself. So when I go online with the same students, and then I go and I meet them in class, it's not the same feeling, same aura, and same, let's say, connection I had with my students. Definitely not, because in the class I would move on, I would go closer to them. It's the physical world, so I'm going to have all my senses as a teacher involved. And for the same for the learners in the online education, online learning, this is not offered by MOOCs or by any other platform for learners, for teachers as well. Moreover, learners, or most of the time, are left alone in front of the videos, in front of registered and recorded videos by ex-teacher whom they don't know. So there is this strangerhood between the learner and the teacher. At this very moment, maybe the learner is left alone, is lost. By the way, I just watched a documentary on DW channel. If you know the channel, you can check it on YouTube, DW. So they had an interesting documentary on kids in Germany. The title of the documentary is Kids in Crisis. So the documentary says, in a nutshell, it says that these kids during the corona pandemic, through their online learning journey, they were lost. They were in a crisis. And this is the bottom line of my reflection. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. We have Dr. Samson who has raised his hand as well. Dr. Samson, welcome to the floor.
Thank you, Tasfa, and thank you, Dr. Dalal.
Thank you.
You have actually perfectly stated the main goals and main ideas of Paulo Freire.
Thank you.
As you said, once I read Pedagogy of the Oppressed in 2013, I was obsessed with that book and perhaps also with Paulo Freire. At the same time, I was also frustrated. And I see this experience up to now with many students and even teachers who have read Paulo Freire. And I have seen many scholars say, like, Paulo Freire has shown us our pain, but it is not really easy to do what he's saying. I mean, there are other structures, there are structural problems, there are political problems, and there are other issues, particularly in dictatorial regions. So how do you find this? I mean, like, did you find applying Paulo Freire principles easy? And what would you suggest for those who are still frustrating from his book, and instead of rejoicing and going to be for awareness and critical ideas or critical thinking.
All right, thank you, Dr. Samson. Of course, we
by the way, this is the 100 years of Paulo Freire's buzz. He was born in September 1921, I guess, and we are doing a special issue, which is probably now be out by the end of this year, based on his 100 years birthday.
Congratulations. So thank you, Dr. Samson, for your reflection. And as I said, we share the same frustrations. We belong to a world of not dictatorships, but false democracies. I give you the example of my own country. Well, it is a democracy. It might be a democracy. It is a false democracy. This is it. It just reminded me of false generosity by Freire. When you call teacher false generous, you describe a teacher as false generous. This is absolutely crazy. So I am struggling with the whole thing of trying to Freirian, let's say, if I can invent the word, my teaching and my relationship with the kids, my let's say my programs too, because the idea of programs, and to tell you one thing about preparing the programs each year, we are loved by our own as teachers, in my department at least, to work on our curricula and syllabi, the program we're going to teach our students. So at this very moment, when I am working on my program, I think of all the principles of Freire and Malik bin Nabi and all these people I cited. The idea of liberating education. Also, when I am in class, so it's not me who is the, I am the maestro. I could be there only as a support for my learners. This is all I can do. So I give much room for my learners, at least in my classes, to be one model of Freire's critical pedagogy, or I like more to say pedagogy of hopefulness. So this is it.
Thank you. Thank you, Samsam, and thank you, Doctor. We have Amira raising her hand. Amira?
Amira, she's my supervisee, my doctoral student.
Welcome,
I am
Amira.
so happy to find her here because it's been ages I didn't see her.
Here we have got.
Oh, I caught her. I caught you. Hello, Amira.
Yeah, I'm happy to see you today. I actually attended this session just to listen to you because it's been a long time. I haven't met you in an actual conference or study day to, yeah, because I really missed the way you present your ideas in an accurate and fluent way. It's almost flawless and very, very educative and insightful. And I want to add to what you have said, something that I really share with you because we belong to the same department and we are among, part of this organism that we are obliged to work on and, just to swim in the direction of the waves. So any attempt to swim against the wave is going to cost us a lot, such as our freedom and creativity. And there is one thing I attempt to do is, as a teacher of research methodology, is to empower students to think critically, because I believe that research is the first, like the very important step towards discovering the truth. At least if I cannot, discuss the political topics or anything that is prevented or restricted in my country and department in the classroom, I could, build their, willingness, their desire, their ability to think critically. At least when I guarantee when they walk outside the classroom, they indulge in their own endeavor to look for the truth. So that's why I have designed this set of activities and sessions where students can, think critically, have their share of empowerment inside the classroom. And the first reaction I get from students is a surprise, of course, because they have not experienced this type of freedom before, and they think freedom is wrong. And most of their comments, like, are we allowed to do this? Am I allowed to stand and, walk and talk to other people? Am I allowed to criticize your opinion? I said, like, Now I'm here as a teacher and instructor. I'm trying to dissociate myself from your learning process. And the thing is that, you know, I'm not trying to be a representation of a grand narrative here because I'm not a politician.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I treat you as individuals, not as an entity, and you don't, you know, you don't have to be among, you know, a single narrative, because you are narratives to me, and I respect every one of you. And I give you this freedom to exhibit your ideas and feel free, and there is no room for wrong and right here, because each one is entitled to their opinions and stances and the way they think. However,
Yeah.
there are challenges I cannot control, but I try to do my best to make it as successful as possible. So really thank you for this session. I really enjoyed listening to you, as I'm really happy that I had a chance to share my opinion with you.
Thank you for this brilliant reflection, Amira. As I know, this is exactly what she's doing in her classes. And here comes the new generation that we are waiting for in our country, generations of young intellectuals who launched the Hirak in my country. So I am so proud of you, Amira, so proud of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, really.
Thanks.
Thank you, Amira, and thank you, Doctor. We have
another question, I guess.
Another question and salutation as well. So it's from Aladdin. Thank you, Doctor. This was indeed insightful and precious presentation. One inquiry that corresponds to one of the points you raised earlier. The question is, do you think the reason why the Algerian/Arab scholars of theory, such as Banabi, are dismissed in the academic domains because their approach to critical theory is rather didactic, in that they still somehow preserve long-held traditions of the culture, rather than, let's say, the French scholars who promote self-critical theory, which substantially goes beyond cultural sensitive paradigms such as questioning identity and religion in themselves?
They simply represent a threat to the very well, deeply rooted, established systems, political systems in my country, in other countries. In Egypt, for instance, is another archetypal country where some scholars been very marginalized. Also, they are moving from the center. It's these scholars, they are not representatives of the French school. Definitely not. Of course, the French school must be one of the nucleus, or parts of our nucleus, starting from that past, like the Frankfurt School, so that we theorize our own reflections and our own opinions about the world. We cannot start from the vacuum. We have to start from somewhere, and this somewhere is the previous schools, French school, Frankfurt School, and the Latin America. You know, Latin American scholars are also very powerful when it comes to critical theory. Enrique Dussel is another name I would like to share with you. Go and read for his books and works and approaches, the transmodernism philosophy. Where are we as Arabs? I'm not going to say Muslims, but let's detach ourselves from religion. Let's put religion aside and let's speak about countries and areas. Let's refer to ourselves as North African countries or the global South. So we belong somewhere. Where are we going to relocate ourselves as Algerian people, as North African peoples, etc.? So I think that it's high time we thought of these works by these scholars of the 20th century. By the way, we have others of the 21st century that you should go and look for. I'm not going to tell you more because it's going to make you lazy. So go and look for more very deep, controversial names, theorians, let's say. Like, I give you names like Kemal Dawood, Lamin Zawi in Algeria, and look for more in your country. This is it.
Thank you, Dr. Dalal Sarno. One of the things that I really struggle to, it made me think about Freire's work with his conceptualization of power as something working in a hierarchical order. And as you mentioned at the beginning, he was inspired by he has a Marxist view of understanding power and how it's like top down. And he calls more for like a bottom up approach where the learner should be the center. I think like I struggle with this understanding of power. And as Amira was saying, sometimes teachers find themselves really hard to swing. She said she mentioned a really nice quote: "Swing against the wave." And sometimes teachers within the kind of hierarchy, they find themselves struggling with other teachers. Maybe they are ready to bring changes, being critical and suggest critical theory into the curriculum that are being used. But other teachers said, no, we don't want that. We just want simplistic curriculum. Just we give to the students, give exams, and have marks at the end. So what do you think about that? So that kind of understanding, it makes me think now power is not centralized. It's more dispersed within the institutional environment.
It is so clever, Suad. It is. And this category of teachers you were referring to represent the mainstream. We represent the against the current, the let's say the countercurrent. We are going against the waves, as Amira said, but we must be powerful. Okay, you mentioned the teachers, and just go and read for Malik bin Nabi. You will understand everything about the mentality. You are referring to a particularly Algerianized mind of teachers. Go and read for Malik bin Nabi. You will understand how we are thinking as Algerian people. It's not the outcome of one era, not two eras. It goes back to very, very, very old days during the Ottoman Empire and on, that there is a construction of the mind of the Algerian individual. This is why Herat, for instance, didn't work. To say it clearly, and I assume what I'm saying, I say it strongly and out loud, it didn't work because it can't work with a mentality like this. Most of the Algerian people are lost somewhere between ideas. And for Malik bin Nabi, he insists on the role of the idea, al-fikra in Arabic. The idea in the Arab world and the Algerian context in particular represents the motor of movements of people, the motor of our reactions to things that are happening in our lives. For teachers, for instance, I will tell you the funny side of the whole story. But they tell you, oh, let's keep the very old way of teaching, because they believe that I'm doing no more than my duty because I'm not well paid. I'm not given, I'm not living a luxurious life as teachers in other countries are living. You know, the whole story of the salary, and we're not given the opportunity to go abroad, and we don't have a good status as university teachers, etc. So for them, I'm going to do the least, the minimum, the least of my job, because I have had the minimum. When it comes to salary, for them, it's embedded in our subconsciousness. This is why they don't think of changing. They don't think of changes. They think of salary, of conditions. Imagine that I am getting in rooms sometimes where you have no electricity, where I have dust, dirt everywhere, where I have no tables. I'm not going to think of change. And one thing that you should read for as well, Ibn Khaldun, the great Ibn Khaldun. For Ibn Khaldun, and in his sociological study of people, different peoples, we can use his ideas. Up to now, they are still relevant. So he says that the most oppressed peoples are the most or the worst morally. Do you understand that? The most oppressed peoples are the worst morally. And this is it. The more we are oppressed, the worse our morals, our behaviors, our reactions, our, let's say, social individuals. مقدمة ابن خلدون, that's it. So he says in Arabic, الشعوب المقهورة الأسوأ أخلاقا. This is in Arabic, and it's very, very deep. And it's very, very relevant to what we are living. In my country, for instance, we see people throwing dirt in the street because they feel this is not my country. This country gave me nothing. This is it. It's in our subconsciousness. But when you go abroad, you feel the difference. You detach yourself from the reality. You are displaced. You are dislocated. You are at the margin, and you see closer. The more you are at the margin, the closer you see the reality of your country. This is why people of the exile or of the diaspora have a different vision. Les immigrés, they have a different vision and view of those, or from those who live inside that place. You read the work of Edward Said, Exile. So in Exiles, many things were said in the work of Edward Said. So this is it. I'm going to explode because I have different ideas and reactions vis-a-vis what is happening around me, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not. It's not personal, by the way.
And we feel like, because you're speaking from experience, that it comes from your heart. So thank you so much for sharing such like personal stories and experiences from your classroom. So you took us to your classroom. Yes.
I have real life stories. All right.
These are no normal personalized narratives. They are really deeply rich intellectual reflections on the base of your everyday mundane experiences and activities. So thank you. I didn't want them to stop. I wanted you to continue. Just tell us, inform us. So yeah, thank you. I wonder if we have any questions, comments. If not, then I will use again the space to ask maybe another question. But I would like our guests to be forthcoming, ask questions, engage. So if there's anyone with comments, please do feel free to write or come to the floor.
I think there was a comment. Comment from Helen. Please, could you put the names of the other two authors you quoted alongside Freire, Mohammed Albo, and who are not included in your program in Algeria? I would like to include more non-European authors in my thesis, especially in my research is mainly concerned with Arab-speaking women, forced migrants learning English.
I mentioned Mohammed Arkoun. That's what I mentioned, but it's he is in a different area, that is the dialogue between the Occident and the Orient, and the dialogue between the Occident and the Muslim world. He's somehow within, you know, what went wrong. Who was the author? Oh my God, I forgot the name.
I think Helen wants to join us. Yes, Helen.
Oh, sorry. Have I still got my hand up? I beg your pardon.
No,
that's my hand. Is it down?
Yeah, it's down now.
Yeah.
No, sorry. Thank you. I was don't worry about that. I can't remember anybody at the moment because I've just been bombarded with authors. I'm just interested in it's a slightly different tack, but I'm wondering if you can help in that area. Particularly Muslim women, but as you said, religion aside, Arab-speaking women who have been chosen to be resettled in the UK as refugees under the Vulnerable Persons Resettlement Scheme. I'm looking at opportunities they have to learn English, which support their resettlement processes. But one thing that's really bothering me is it's coming out of what you've said today, but I can't quite put my finger on it. So the way that we teach English to Arabic speaking women, for example, from Syria or wherever they might have come from, how do they receive that? And are we getting it? Are we doing it the right way? Is I suppose what I'm asking. It's a bit like, you know, the way that certain nationalities don't understand others, and they go around and use military force to oppress them. Yeah, I just wonder if it's a similar thing with the way we teach. This is how you must learn, and this is how you will resettle properly into our society, into British society, which is like this. And it isn't like that all the time, is it? It's very different compared to a society they might have come from. I suppose that's a very long question. I'm sorry.
It's just that I was thinking about the answer to your question, but I think that me not living in the UK, I can't really imagine how Syrian women would view your way of teaching, or would whether accept it or. But I know about the Syrian women's experience in Germany. I watched a documentary on one of the German channels. I don't quite remember maybe it's DW again, but so it just did out of fear. We're coming back to Syria, where war is devastating the whole country. So it just that it's a must to learn that language. It's the same for, we have Syrian people living in Algeria and in Oran, where I live. So they have their own business, but the problem is always cultural. We are both Arab peoples, but they can't still cope and integrate and assimilate with my society in Oran. They are absolutely marginalizing or disclosing themselves from the society in Oran and in other Algerian cities, as if they feel they are still strangers, maybe because it's too cultural, because the people of the Middle East are different culturally from those of the Maghreb, the big Maghreb, Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria. So I think that the Syrian people or women who are living in the UK are learning the language as, maybe they consider the language as a weapon to survive in the UK, to stay away from Syria as a place of war, because they've been really oppressed there by the regime, by the opposition. It's all the same for me. I think this is my expectation. So I can help you with I can help you with some people who are living in Algeria, Syrian, because I have neighbors who are Syrians. And I asked the woman, the lady once, I said, why you don't go out in the street like other women in my area? So said that I still feel as a stranger. And it's been 6 years that she's in this city. She's still feeling like a stranger because of the dialect. Of course, two different languages, if I can say languages. Also, the societal behavior of Syrian groups and us as Algerian people living in Oran city in particular is completely different. You can see there is something cultural, and there are those who are Shia. They are from the sect. It's something sectarian. Again, we come back to religion. It's something religious. I guess so. So
that's really very interesting. Thank you. I'd love to carry that on with you if I may later.
I hope I've been helpful enough.
That's really, thank you. May I email you later? Thank you.
I'm very pleased to help out. Thanks a lot for your question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we have another comment from Suad Smaili. She was saying, I remember when I was collecting my data at the University of BJI, I interviewed writing teachers to investigate their perceptions about innovative teaching methods and bringing change to the EFL classroom to offer the learners the opportunity to join their desirable learning communities and, as Norton said, become agents of change and break the walls of the classroom. I was surprised that teachers who are old in the field said they do not welcome any change as they are happy with the traditional methods. Novice teachers, however, mentioned as an important thing, which is running teachers training sessions where native teachers would be involved to train them on how to innovate teaching and learning on their classrooms. This is one of the things that emerged in my findings of my PhD research study. Thanks a lot, Dr. Dalal, for such an informative session.
Thank you for her reflection. It's funny, but it's true, because all teachers are always having the same perception of change. It's like the FLN in Algeria, you know. But one thing about the new generation of, as she said, the novice teachers, or you young teachers, I may belong to your generation, by the way. I'm not that old, but still, you know what's the key in there? That we are partly living a virtual life where we are exposed to something more global. And we are no more, I introduced the idea to my students of master, that is, we are more homo digitalis. We are no more homo sapiens. You know, imagine yourself as someone who is half virtual, half global, half local, half Algerian. This is the idea. I mean, it's interesting to think about the whole experience. We don't see the outcomes of our experience online on the spot or after, immediately in the next few years, but we see it after 10 or so. I mean, I've seen that in myself. The more I immersed myself in the virtual world, the more I became global and very tolerant in the way I'm thinking, very innovative. The more I am exposed to other, the ideas of other people from other places of the world, the more I become open to change. This is a key factor, you know. You can share with me the same perception and you can be against the whole thing, but I strongly believe that one of the factors that make novice teachers and young learners more open to change, more flexible, more tolerant, is their exposure to the virtual and global and international world. Adding to this that we are learning a global language. This is it. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Dalal Sarno. I just want to see if someone wants to
Go ahead.
Add comments, questions.
I'm still alive, you know. I'm alive. This is it.
Yes.
Okay.
To answer your questions.
I might use the opportunity to ask maybe another question. You talk mainly on Algeria in a specific context, but maybe in general terms also North Africa as point of reference for this wonderful presentation today. But I would like to ask you about your reflections on in general about the post-colonial, maybe post-liberation African state, and in terms of how the new state inherited colonial educational institutions, and maybe if there were works in the context of your presentation today, if you think there was a political expediency to maintain the inherently problematic somehow educational institutions and curriculum governance, education governance in some of the countries. And if you can maybe mention some examples or your reflections on that in general.
Of course, as a scholar who was once based in the post-colonial research areas, And then I discovered other areas. I would like to come back to Fukuyama, end of history, that post-colonialism has come to an end. I explain. Young generations of thinkers in 10 years from now, they won't think about these differences, cultural differences from different places of the world. If you take the example of those who are digital activists, they would respond to different events all over the world. Remember the Ferguson's, the murder, the black man murder in Georgia, I think Ferguson, all right. The Me Too movement, the different hashtags you have on Twitter. So Twitter and the social media world has taken over all the theories in post-colonialism. If you just share this point of view with me, just think of it as 10 years or 20 years. George Floyd, thank you, George Floyd. So 20 years ago, we had only works of Edward Said, of Frantz Fanon, of Spivak, etc., etc. Do you think that the Z generation, the Homo digitalis I was speaking about in a couple of minutes from now, have this local mind to think of local events? No, they are global in their perception of the world. So I think post-colonialism has come to an end, or will have to come to an end in few years from now, because the world of social media is becoming where all these minds gather. You can find activists from Algeria, activists from the United States, from UK, from France, and responding to events from all over the world, from India, what happened in Canada, the last week's event, the murder of the family in Canada. So we didn't have, it was an Islamophobic event, but we didn't have only Muslims responding to, we didn't have only post-colonial thinkers to respond to the events. We had people from all over the world twittering and sharing tweets and sharing posts on Facebook regarding the event. So we have two words now. And the word that is taking over the other word is the virtual world. And this is my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
Thanks.
I don't see any other comments. Maybe is there any comment or question that we missed, Tasfalem, in the discussion chat box?
No, I think we have covered all the comments and the questions.
Okay. Thank you so much again. Thank you once again, Dr. Dalal Sarno, for this talk. It was really nice, and again, because you're speaking from experience, that would made it like so authentic. And again, like Freire's work it makes us rethink and unlearn all these structures and orders that we maybe kind of internalized as being previous students, and we still reproduce. And in general, it also helps us as researchers, as practitioners, to kind of challenge the dominant knowledge production. And this is what the seminars was about, like the series of seminars, Decolonize and Forced Migration. It was about bringing academics, scholars from different backgrounds, from different parts of the world, to be able to speak their voice and to be able to reflect on their personal experiences. So I think this was the last seminar of our series. It was really a nice kind of ending. We still have a concluding roundtable next month. We will bring everything, all the discussions together. But for now, I think that was the end of our discussion. Again, if you, for the participants, if you feel you want to add something, ask a question, please feel free to step up. I'll leave you with that. Thank you again, Dr. Dalal Sarno. Thank you for the participants for joining us as well.
interesting and extraordinary and very, very relieving, because I was kind of tired, but then you pumped me up. You pumped some life and energy in me. So thank you so much, Suad, for the opportunity, for the invitation, for being so supportive and so collaborative. For the rest of the audience, thank you so much, Dr. Helen and Samson, all those who were behind the cameras. It was really an interesting discussion. I was learning from what you were saying and reflection on my part of some parts of the discussion. And I really hope to see you again. Why not?
Yes, yeah, we'll have
Thank
to see
you.
Thanks
Thank you
a
very
lot.
much.
Thank you.